So we started having some discussions with them about, do we have a need for this? The most obvious one would be, is it possible to use this facility as a county jail? We need some help to make those decisions, and so we've been working with Tom, his staff, and we have a couple of representatives here from DLR Group. I just want to give a little bit of background on DLR. As this discussion started, we realized we had already worked with DLR on our jail, with the previous studies in our jail. They've also worked with the Oregon Youth Authority, so they also know their facilities well, and we thought these would be the perfect people for us to talk to about what we can do with that facility. So what I thought we'd do tonight is just start with the sheriff for a few minutes, just to talk about, sort of what the current challenges and issues are, with the jail. And then we're going to turn over to our friends from the DLR Group, and they're going to walk through some, pretty detailed concepts and cost estimates of, what could happen out of the correctional facility. So with that, thanks, Sheriff Berger.
I'm sorry, are those little handouts for us, or?
Actually, yes.
So, obviously, I've been in this business 33 years.
I'm sorry, just a minute. Is this recorded?
Yes.
There's a recording
So
there.
that'll pick up everybody? Because I'm having a little trouble hearing.
Breaker. All right. So obviously, I've been in this business 33 years here, and we started back in 1976. We got a brand new jail, and it's that one that you see across the street. It's not the old one where the Goonies was filmed. Hi, Sarah. We're just starting. Thank you. And so anyway, in 1976, we had a bond passed for this $2.1 million bond, which is to build this whole big jail. It was supposed to be a 76-bed jail with vertical lift on it, so we could build another jail upstairs if we needed, or more space and more beds upstairs. Well, over the years, people got a lot smarter in building jails and know how to build jails, and unfortunately, when you do 2 floors, you're bifurcating your workspace, or your workforce, I should say, and people don't understand that you have to have the same amount of people on this floor as you do on this floor. It's direct supervision versus indirect supervision, and so on, are 2 different types of elements. This would have been a huge debacle. Then we found out later that you couldn't build up, and then second of all, it was only supposed to be originally for admin buildings, for administration, not for actual jail beds. So that whole thing turned out to be quite the debacle. The 76 beds never even came to fruition because they lost money, and they had to, they didn't lose money, but they were not allowed enough money to complete the project, so they immediately took it to 29 beds to build this facility.
Because
So
they had originally planned for some of those 76 beds to be on top?
Nope, it was going to be all in one area, but they didn't have enough money to make it that as big as it was supposed to be. So they downsized and made 29 beds
So in the process
in the
of
facility,
constructing the jail,
just prior
they
to,
make it smaller.
right. They realized they're not going to have the funding to do it, and so there they were stuck. So they made this great big beautiful jail in 1980 and for 29 beds. And they already knew at that point that they needed about 70 to 80 beds. So in 1983, the jail double bunked, increasing the capacity to 45 beds, which doesn't add up if you think 29 and 29 equals 45. But it, anyway, so that's closer. So I'll explain a little bit later. 1985, when they were able to get to more beds, was we took the gym out and converted it, should say the gym and part of the laundry, and converted that into a dormitory room that currently holds 9 beds or somewhere in there, Lieutenant? Yeah. Okay, 12. So that was able to get us up to approximately the current, the size that we needed at that time of 60 beds, or 59 beds. So then the other problem was, in 1986, we had this huge downfall of money, and there was no money. There was like 3 deputies that worked for the office. There was a sheriff, there was a lieutenant, and then there was a two road deputies. And then even at one time it got down to 1. The jail was also shortly diminished, which is a different area. It was rough, and so they only were able to house 22 beds and afford 22 beds at the time. So as you can see, this county's had a lot of issues with the, go ahead.
Tom, what happened in 1986 to the economy that it went down to 22 beds? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't remember. I was here, but I don't remember. I just know that the 80s, the middle 80s, we had a lot of that. Yeah, we had a lot of, building sites went down, the lumber business went down. I mean, everything was,
Major recession.
Yeah,
Right.
So that, by 86.
and then our taxes pay for law enforcement, it's what we need and stuff. So in 88, the county passes a new tax base, increased budgeting capacity back to 45 inmates. So that was good. That was good news. In 99, we had a jail analysis study recommend construction of a new 144-bed. This is the first of 4 studies that have taken place. Expanded to 170 beds by the year 2020. Well, we're 3 years away from 2020. And back then, the prediction was 170 beds. 2002, the failure of the first bond measure to replace the jail. I was on that group, or with that group, to try to get that passed. And we had a lot of people in the community, and everybody says, oh, it failed miserably. That's not true. It actually passed in a lot of, Josh, what do you call them? The districts, not the precincts. Thank you. I knew you'd know it. He's a junkie when it comes to that stuff. So it actually passed in several precincts, and it did fail, though. 2004, we had a grand jury investigation, and the report came out, recommends a new jail. 2004, then we were able to, at the time, talk to the county administrator and the county commissioners. They funded another study, and it was done by the National Institute of Corrections assessment. And they said that we needed additional staffing, and said, yeah, you guys are definitely hurting here. The 2005 National Sheriff's Association jail study also recommended, a year later, recommended increasing our staff from 21 to 32 just to meet the basic needs of the current facility. We're currently at 26 employees still at that, or 27, excuse me. That's including the jail commander, though, of the facility. 2008, another study. I wanted to just like this, okay, but I'm not gonna. 2008, another study by Voorhees Associates, because every time, no offense, commissioners, but every time we get a new set of commissioners, it's like, let's get a new study. And it's like, y'all have to trust us. We kind of know what we're doing in this business, especially when we have experts like these two sitting here. So that 2008 still says we need about 170 beds, but we also had that transition center that 40 of those beds at the time were made up of. The problem was the transition center turned into, I'll say it, I've said it publicly before, an overnight daycare center. People were coming and going. They had sex parties, they had drug parties, they had alcohol parties, and there was one person in charge over there at night, and it turned into a huge debacle, and it was just ungovernable.
So it wasn't staffed properly.
Well, no, not that it only wasn't staffed properly, but the whole model just doesn't work. There's issues all over the United States with transition centers. So it's just not that it's not staffing. There was plenty of staff, and they even actually did bump it up to 2 at night and so on. But there's just a lot of issues that come with transition centers. And so, but anyway, so about in 2010, I believe that's when the commission, or 2011, the commissioner said, hey, Sheriff, this is kind of a, would you please shut down the transition center and then turn the parole and probation and take it over, and let's not take it over, but let's merge it with the sheriff's office. And I said, sure, and we'll come back a year later, and we did, and they wanted to have a report. We did, and it's worked out immensely well for parole and probation working with the sheriffs, because now we all work together instead of fighting each other. Our average daily population is 68. I've seen it as high as 92 several times in the 90s. That's just ludicrous. It was so dangerous that I had to go with Heather Reynolds, our attorney, in front of the board in 2000 and I want to say 2010, somewhere 11, somewhere in there, I believe, and put a cap on it, where we requested a cap for by the board. They're the ones that can say, yes, we'll put a cap of 60. So we're currently at a cap of 60, but the problem is we have so many people, so much crime, and so much stuff. The statistics will show later that these will be able to show you that we're number 1 in this, we're number 3 in this, and it's just crazy. We have a lot of people.
Do we still use space in Tillamook jail?
No, They needed their space. Unfortunately, they said, we're done. We can't rent you beds anymore for $55 a day, which was a smoking deal. Our current cost is $82 a day, I think, somewhere right in there to run a bed. But
That just stopped this year.
yeah, it just stopped 3-4 months ago at the point of the new budget. So in July.
If we were willing to pay them more, would they?
Nope. They said we can't take any more. We are full. Our jail's at full capacity right now, and we cannot take your inmates any longer. Columbia County is way out of the ballpark, and we've done all these studies for transporting back and forth. It's an extra $1.2 million a year, $1.2 million a year just to do the transports.
It's geographically too far away.
It is, yeah. And it's just, if they were right at the line and we were right at the line, I'd say let's go, because we could do like another Norcor, which is the jail in Hood River, that does 4 counties. But you got to remember, those 4 counties are Sherman, Wheeler, Wasco, and Hood River, yeah. And the problem is, they're bringing like 2 and 3 people a day, where we're bringing in 10 or 12 or 15 a day. And that's, some of those counties don't even bring anybody. They'll bring 5 people in for the whole year, like Wheeler County or whatever. So far today, we've done 1,800 bookings so far this year. Forced release 209. That means, sorry, there's just no room for you at the inn. So that's about 1 a day, maybe a little bit less, but yes.
So the ones that are held in Seaside and then come up, do you?
There's really nobody held in Seaside. They do have excuse me, I shouldn't say it like that. They have their little city jail, which is technically kind of not following the standards that are required by the Oregon State standards and the state standards as well. They're very close. They're trying to fix it, but they understand also that it's not really in compliance. It's so outdated and so. But anyway, so what happens is, if they have a felony charge, then yes, they'll bring them up here. They do their own transports. They bring them to the county jail, just like Astoria does, Warrenton does, Cannon Beach, whomever else, state police. So they bring them to our county jail. And so those bookings, anybody that gets arrested comes to the county jail. Anybody that spends less than a year does county time if they're sentenced, and anything more than a year goes to state prisons. So that's how that works. But yes, they do bring them up, so they have a Dewey for the night, and they don't have time to run them up. They'll put them in their jail they're supposed to only hold for 4 hours. I remember when I worked there, sometimes we'd have people in there for 60 days and feed them 3 TV dinners a day, and it wasn't very, I guess.
I just wonder if the scope of the problem, if this accurately portrays the scope of the problem, or if there are more factors.
No, I mean, yes, it does, but there's actually 2 ways that we can pull up statistics, and sometimes bookings, technically we're probably at 6,000 right now, but that's taking people and looking at them multiple times when they've have multiple charges, I should say. So technically you get booked in for disorderly and then assault and then homicide or whatever. So, but people, 1,800, right, current to date, and then the forced release 200.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Who gets released?
Well, we had a matrix in place that was a mathematical equation, and just a couple of weeks ago, we just replaced that with a person. We have a grant from that goes through parole and probation, the jail and parole and probation. We all work together to get this money, and it's a release person. So what they do is now, they do an interview, they make sure that this person is, and it's actually working extremely well. I just had an update. Josh and I are arguing about it right now, but in a friendly way, but I'll just punch him out later. So, but anyway, have you do it. So, but yeah, but the person comes in and he runs the CCH, then he also checks to see if they have a job in the community. Do they have all these different factors that would actually allow them to make exactly prior record, previous type of record. Are they going to show up for court? Are they going to, so on and so on. So we've only had to release 1 person prior to arraignment. Before, a lot of these people would have been released before arraignment, which creates another warrant because they don't show up. At least we can get them arraigned out of the chute, so to speak, for the first original charge. So we've only had it in place for 2 weeks, and there's little things here and there. Heather's reviewed it, and it's been a study that's been going on since 1980, factors have been included since 1980 to make this thing work, and agencies all across the United States are using it, and it's good for counties that do not have enough jail space, and it really is holding people accountable. And we actually have a guy that goes out and says, hey, you've got a court date, or you have this, or you have that, and so on, and we'll go out into the field and even find them as well. So we work hand in hand with parole and probation on that, who's under one of my divisions. So the state average for bookings per 1,000 population is 52. We're at 64.6. Tillamook County looks like they're busier than us, which is not true. But they have a jail that works. They have enough beds. They have, I don't remember how many beds. Do you remember, Matt?
I think that they're authorized for 120.
A little bit more. So they're at 120, 130 beds. Their county's smaller than ours. They don't have near the tourism influx that we do. But they hold people. When somebody shoplifts, they book them in. We don't. We cite and release C felonies around here. Like steal a car, cite and release, here you go. Don't steal another one on the way out of town. PCS, possession of controlled substance, stuff like that. Here, don't, so on. So we cite and release a lot of people. So our bookings are down, compared to a lot of other counties and so on. So.
But it's completely artificial.
Exactly. Very good. So is this the one that's included in the last slide or not? No,
This one is for you.
I'm gonna have to put my dang glasses on to read this, and y'all will too. But Matt came up with this slide, and what this is, it shows that 4 people out of Arch Cape were actually brought to our jail, and then 524 out of Astoria. The other thing that says other than 25, that says they were picked up in Astoria, but they might live in Lake Oswego, but they're homeless, or wherever, and they decide they're going to live on the street for a few weeks, and so that's that. So that's that total population. Cannon Beach, pretty safe place as well. But then you look at the total number there, people from Portland, people from other areas and so on, and we didn't even pull in the others are there, but like Tacoma or wherever. So it's about 30% a year are not coming from our area. So it says 27%, but we've always said 70, 30, and obviously this is a little bit just behind. And then this is where we'll go into the OUCRs. This is where I believe you two are going to kick it in or not.
Well, this one's yours as well.
But okay, well, this OUCR is the Oregon Uniform Crime Reporting System, and it shows you that in Clatsop County, behavioral crimes like PC, possession, controlled substance, and things like that. And then you have person crimes and property crimes. But you can see we're number 1 for behavioral crimes. We're number 6 for person crimes. Like,
Can't really see it.
I know.
Number 1 in the state?
Number 1 in the state, out of all these counties, the 36 counties. And I'm sorry, this is the hardest slide to see. Absolutely, and so I'll read it off to you, Sarah. But Clatsop County is number 1 out of all 36 counties for behavioral crimes. That's that first column.
What comes under behavioral crime?
Possession of controlled substance. Josh can elaborate. Disorderly things that you're.
Things that don't necessarily involve injury or evil, which is a person crime, or property crimes, which are theft, car theft, embezzlement.
You're right.
It's the joke among defense attorneys is come on vacation,
Leave on probation.
come back on a violation.
Right.
How many warrants do you have right now, Sheriff?
Oh, boy. At one time it was 1,800, but I don't even know how many warrants. It might have been over 2,000 now. 2,000 warrants, outstanding warrants.
200 people with a warrant out arrested. You swamp the jail.
Right.
In 5 seconds.
So we can't hold them accountable, and they know it.
How many of the people that are involved with this are tourists and how many are local?
30%, that last slide was about 27 to 30% are tourists, and the 70% are locals.
And when we had the tour of the jail, you said that over 90% are in there because some kind of drug-related charge?
Yep, easily, probably 90, 95. Not drug-related charge, but they have a drug problem. And that's part of the whole deal with this new jail is we can put in mental health facility, we can put in a treatment facility, we can do all kinds of different things when we have the room to do it, and hold people in in jail long enough where the program actually might make a difference. Instead of the matrix or kicking them out in 1 day or 2 days, if we're going to hold them for 90 days, we talked to the judges just last week and this week, and they said, absolutely, we would sentence people to 90 days, know that they're going to get some treatment if we had beds, but we know we don't have beds, so we sentence them to 3 days. We sentence them to a week. We sentence them to 60 days, but we know they're going to get out in 4 days. And that's how it works.
So the OYA.
Accountability.
Which I understand from what they presented to us, did an outstanding job of getting the young people involved with getting their GED and getting treatment and whatnot. But the state found they could not support it. So my concern, I have no doubt that we need to be jail, but how do we fund all the personnel that would go in the medical and all that?
That's a whole nother
Well, I
bunch
think,
of
yeah, we're
slides that are
going to
coming
see
up.
some of
We're
that
gonna
as
bring
part,
that up too.
we'll see what those costs will look like. We won't answer the question of how we pay for it tonight, but,
Weigh in on this briefly,
Sure.
Because I understand your concern, which is, the state can't run, but keep in mind, this was an adult youth prison. And the state of Oregon only confined the absolute worst juvenile offenders. I mean, you really had to be at the top end of behavior, usually measurable level crimes. They were ages generally 15 through 25. And it's a very, very different facility than a jail.
Than an adult
Nobody
county
is
jail.
locked up in Hudson County for using drugs, or for being drunk, or for being mentally ill. It's not a crime in the United States. It's not even a crime to be high.
Right.
It's a crime to possess drugs. We don't hold people for possessing drugs.
We haven't for years. Just
I've been
can't.
in the DA for 24 years. I've been here for both of the jail bonds. None of the things that we want to have work will work with the 60 or 90 at jail. There's simply no ability to hold on to them long enough and to hold, basically leveraging people. Again, although there's a high enough percentage of people who are substance abuse, that goes from alcohol all the way to heroin, some legal drugs, some illegal drugs. And that often is part of it. But keep in mind, Oregon is a state that has one of the lowest incarceration rates in the country. We have the second lowest drug incarceration, less than 7% of people in prison are there for drug offenses. If we don't have a jail population, possibly of 150 plus, we are going to constantly be chasing the same people over and over again. And keep in mind, my office files about 900 misdemeanors and 600 felonies. Misdemeanors cannot go to prison. But what, for example, Commissioner, do you think should happen to somebody for their third drunk driving, well, let's say their fourth drunk driving in 12 years? Jeff, what do you think an appropriate punishment?
I can get them off the road.
Okay, how long? How long should they be locked up? They committed their fourth doing in say, 15 years.
A year.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. That's the thing. Right now, to be honest with you, we would maybe get 30 to 45 days.
And then they'd come into my jail and they're going to get matrixed out in about 3 to 4 days.
And then they're gonna be back in 2 months.
And then they're going to, same thing.
Or
But Josh,
so, yeah, good discussion, but we got a lot more information to get through here.
Right.
In about 30 minutes.
right,
So-
and I'll hit this last one here. Thanks, Josh. So the property crimes were number 4 in the state for like burglaries and things like that. So a lot of people say, wow, Clatsop County's a nice little place. Well, it is, but there's also a lot of darn crime that goes on here as well. Are these yours, where we're gonna go?
They're yours.
No. Well, I don't want to talk about food and all that stuff. No. When I started, we had a cook. We had 2 cooks, a cook and a half actually. One was really short. No, I'm just kidding. We had a cook and a half, part-time. And then we also had homemade meals and all that stuff. We went to getting inmate meals from corrections, Eastern Washington Corrections, where the inmates make them. They ship them down. We always have a week's extra supply. It's $160 a year. Projected costs are about $235. We think we can do the same as Norcor, who has about 180 beds. And then they go as high as $425. It's not going to happen under my watch. Medical, we're getting a steal of a deal right now. One of the county commissioners about 8 years ago said we can do this a lot cheaper. They looked into it. The county manager said, by golly, you're right. It turned out it was going to be $1.6 million a year as the next cheapest we could do. So projected, because we have 2 doctors that are willing to just sacrifice and give us so much stuff. So These are your staffing comparisons and
Yeah,
all
we'll
that.
get
Yeah,
into some
so-
of this in the next
Alright.
presentation. So Erica's here from DLR.
I'll trade with it.
She just needs to turn it on to the.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
And, you know, we're going to look at a couple of concepts of what we could do with that facility or what we could do on that property. One thing we've started this discussion, and one thing I do want to emphasize is that you have to look both at the upfront capital costs, but also the long-term operating costs. Sometimes the cheapest option up front isn't the cheapest option in the long run. So you're going to see some options here. The numbers are going to be very different, but you also have to pay attention to these operating costs. So.
So, thank you for letting us come to the workshop.
And you weren't here, Sarah,
Oh.
but this is Erica and this is Lori. And these ladies are remarkably smart at making things work. So they fixed our other building out where we're currently working too. So
So just a quick cruise through some things. So this report that you've been passed out is the most current report that we provided this summer on the opportunity to relocate into the Oregon Youth Authority building. It was a opportunity that we feel like we have a lot of background to be able to bring and understand their operations and how to work that facility. So we created two options. The first is the one that's in this report. The second was a follow-up with the Sheriff's Department on Sheriff's Office. Sheriff's Office to look at how to work through the operations issues that would be with this plan. So I'm going to walk through this plan and say how we house it, and then I'll show you the second option. So this plan is using the existing, you can't see this on the screen, sorry. So we're going to have to just.
maybe I'll hit it. You just tell me when.
Oh, no, go back. I was trying to get the laser.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
it's not, the laser doesn't work on the wall.
Is this also in here?
Not as
There.
clearly as this, but all of this information for this scheme is in this book. So this scheme is the existing building. Yeah. And this scheme will provide 140 beds for the new jail. By doing this, we would not have to build an addition. We would be renovating many of the departments. So the first department is the top one on the north side of the building. It's celled classification housing. That's an existing single bunk housing unit that is there right now. And we would be just adding a second bunk to each room. So that would allow 40 beds in that unit.
I get male and female, but what's cell classification?
It just means celled. So this unit right here
You can't
is
put sex
directly off
offenders
of.
in with burglars.
Yeah,
and things like
yeah.
that.
So we also evaluated a lot about classifications. So it's not just how many beds can you put, but how do you classify throughout the facility?
We have to we have to be real careful of mentally ill people, of sex offenders, because they're going to get beat up. That's just reality, right, or worse.
It may actually come.
Or all kinds of other things. You want to trade?
So I can get the mouse, or yes.
Here, let's just
Then I can use the mouse as a pointer, because it'll be easier. So this department right here, and it's adjacent to the existing intake and booking. There's minor modifications in booking to allow for adult kind of control and supervision in there. This is the existing administration, and we would modify it to allow non-contact visitation within this portion to connect to intake and booking. This area here is the administration. That would basically stay the same, just minor modifications. This is the existing central control room where the main computer that runs all the doors for the exterior doors is. That would remain as is. This area right here is the current medical area, and it's completely insufficient for adult use and also the number of beds that would be here. So we're modifying that to be staff locker rooms and toilet and changing rooms and staff break areas so that they could come into the facility and kind of get their things secured there. This is the existing mechanical area that would be modified to have laundry because there's not on-site laundry for Oregon Youth Authority, or they do it within the pods in residential units.
When you say mechanical, you mean where the air conditioning and heating stuff?
Where the boilers are, yeah. Then this area right now is their current vocational education area, which is just one large department room. We are renovating that. The brown rooms are the new medical suite, which would have 2 exam rooms and some observation rooms and a nurse's station. and holding that would just allow them to drop somebody off, and then the nurse, when they're ready for them, could pick them up and take them to a exam room. There's also spaces for medical health interviews and a medical health provider to be on site. Mental health.
Where's the
Mental.
exit to the outside from there?
You would go out into the quadrangle. You cannot go out to this side.
So would an ambulance be able to come out?
Not in this area, no. The ambulance would have to come to the Sally Port here, and the gurneys and things would have to be transported to the intake. We are not building a new Sally Port. And the existing vehicle Sally Port is right here.
That's how OIA currently runs it.
Yes.
So they need an ambulance
So
out there.
that medical is closer to that.
It is
Yeah, but
slightly
they
closer.
would never, they would, right now, currently, that medical is so insufficient, OIA doesn't, if there's somebody they know that's gonna be in an ambulance, they just take it directly to intake.
The hospital.
This is the existing food services area, which is actually in perfect condition, and it has brand-new equipment. So the food service area would have no work beyond just identified deferred maintenance in the facility. This is the existing gymnasium and weight room that also is sufficient for doing indoor recreation for the adult inmates. So we don't have any work scheduled for here. These pods are the existing housing units for the youth. They did have additional space here on all of their facilities for growth. We do not recommend at this point building that out, but there is area there for future addition if necessary. The way that we've classified this would be female housing. In these areas, we would break right now it's currently one large dormitory. We would break it into two so that it would have an adequate number of people being housed at one time together, just a little bit more control for each unit. So dormitories here, and then they have existing 4 single cells that we would use here. The benefit of these spaces is that they do have a lot of programs area within the unit. So there's a large active day room here where people can use tables and play games or do programming together. Smaller spaces here and here for a classroom on each pod.
So would administrative segregation be the cell classification?
Yes, yes. When you move to here, this unit is male housing, and so similarly has 2 pods here, the 4 celled here. But to get some more beds, we actually changed the programs that were down here. We modified those to be another dormitory. So there's 3 dormitories in this male housing unit. And in this unit for the more higher level offenders, we've made this into a celled area that would have 16 beds within cells here in double bunk rooms. And then they have the 4 cells, single cells here for the ones that need to be held independently. Each one has an associated outdoor rec that's just kind of an allocated amount of space. So for this report,
I have a question. So it's my understanding that females are pretty much becoming more equal as far as, so why would the male
Well, it's
dormitories be?
partially true, Commissioner. When I first started, you'd be lucky to have 1 female in the jail, or 2 on a really crazy weekend. Now it runs about 25% of the population, so it's not equal. It's still 25, 75 instead of 98 to 2. It's 75, 25 now. It's about 25% of our population on a daily basis. So
And the female population across the United States is growing much more rapidly than the male population.
It
The male
is.
population is actually going down a little bit.
And if we-
Females are going
and if
up.
we need to, we can shut down one, and like we do currently over here, and we'll say, okay, everybody, all the boys move out of this one, move the girls in, and we can kind of rearrange. So. And this is kind of the current way this thing's laid out with a remodel internally. So, which is
100% internal remodel,
Right.
no addition at all. And so looking at this one, we did a cost estimate that is included in your books that you were given, just to give the highlights and kind of break down the costs. Deferred maintenance is a list that was provided, and it is listed in the report. It was a list provided by the Oregon Youth Authority as part of the communication with us to show a list of everything that they've identified in the past 4 years that need to be fixed, either because of wear and tear, typical facility maintenance or ongoing maintenance, or actual things that have issues. Working with this unit has been put in multiple places around the state, and we've worked on many of them, and they have some detailed issues that cause some damage to just the built infrastructure that needs to get fixed. So deferred maintenance is part of the discussion with Oregon Youth Authority, and they have identified 3.2, approximately just over $3.2 million of deferred maintenance items that they have identified.
And to interrupt you really quickly, Senator Betsy Johnson is working on that for us to try to get some additional funding from the state in the next legislative session.
Senator Johnson specifically asked me to bring this message to you. She's made it clear that it's going to be a hard sell to get money. So, and one of the ways the jail has failed in the past too is when we did not have absolutely unanimous support across all elected officials. The sheriff and the DA are usually not a problem, but the commission and the judges all have to be on board. Senator Johnson is an influential senator, but she's from the coast. You're not part of the metro area. Depending on how much you need from the state, she's willing to make that journey, but it's not without political cost, so she's going to need some living help. And she called me about 3 o'clock this afternoon and asked if I would convey that to.
And the judges are supportive. So basically, we're talking to you. So the judges, DA, and senators. So, go ahead. Sorry.
So I see on page 27, something that gives me some cause for concern about the water intrusion. I mean,
That's what we're talking about.
Always a concern. Are you
Yes.
confident that OYA has adequately framed the problem?
Yes, they do, and working on all of their facilities, they frequently have this issue. They know what the issue is. It has been identified. Their deferred maintenance includes removal of all the exterior windows that are along the interior quadrangle through here, because that's part of it, is that the water is leaking through them, and also the frames themselves have been corroded from the inside out. The water intrusion to the facade has been identified, how that issue happened, and we are aware of what those remedies would have to be.
So what you're saying is the facilities that were built during this time period for OYA are the same,
Yep.
same
Yes.
plan?
They were all built at the
So
same
they
time.
learn together what the problem is.
And these
They
ladies
have-
work for DLR Group, and they dealt with these same issues at other locations other than just this.
Of course, as you know, this one it's accentuated here because your water is much more significant, but it is an issue that's been identified on all of their facilities. So this option has no new construction, it's all renovation. So when you add the deferred maintenance and the renovation cost, you get the total construction cost for the hard things. Cost escalation is about, because the cost estimate that we provided is as if you were doing the middle of construction in November of 2019. So we're factoring that in because we know that's the earliest this would happen. It would not happen sooner than that. So we have added just under $1 million of escalation, knowing that that is happening. This also includes hard cost construction markups, which are things that are just a result of being in construction from the general contractor that are included in hard costs. We can, just for the brevity of time, I don't want to go through them too hard. And then there's a percentage of soft costs, which are all the things outside of just building the building that are required to make this steel work, which would equate to $12.8 million approximately. Right here. So this, when we reviewed this with the sheriff's office, there were concerns about staffing that we'll talk about in more detail. So they asked us to do some options of what would happen if we were to consolidate, similar to what the sheriff was referring to, into an indirect supervision system instead of a direct supervision. So this is a standard prototype that we've implemented in many facilities around the country. And most predominantly here, we're working with Crook County on a scheme like this. It's been done in Caldwell County and multiple places in North and Washington.
Planned it at Benton County as well. There's
Yep. Multiple facilities use this. It's a very,
Sorry, I missed something. So we talked about the first, is this not the second?
this is the second option.
Okay, and this is adding on the original.
With an addition,
footprint.
yes.
Adds more to the original.
Yes.
And mothballing.
But also
Yes.
not using part of it.
Yeah, so all of this part is now remaining exactly the way it is right now. It could be, officers could go in and use these program areas if they wanted to, but we would only do the minimal deferred maintenance just to make sure the building is standing and not any kind of concern.
Okay, so let me hold you up for a minute. In terms of inmate safety,
Mhm.
in terms of exposure to risk, because I remember hearing at AOC that an inmate was being settlement because his liver was lacerated?
Could be, yeah, I mean, it happens, yes.
Well, all I'm saying is, are we having a trade-off? You talked about future risks. It's not just the operational cost, it's the exposure to lawsuits by inmates.
Correct, and a lot of times, Commissioner, what happens is when you have this kind of supervision versus the other, direct versus indirect, we see things happen a lot quicker, and this is more of the way jails are going, and obviously because it's less staff intensive, but we can also see a lot more stuff with one set of eyes or two sets of eyes instead of 8 people, and over the long run, this might be more expensive up front, what the county manager was saying, which it will be, but over the long run, when you start deferring out all the costs of personnel, then you're going to be a lot better off for the county.
So upfront we pay for technology and design.
Correct.
Or we pay for staffing.
Right.
That's exactly correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can mitigate your risk in the other plan as long as you staff it properly.
Right.
And if you don't staff.
If you don't staff it properly, you are going to have problems.
Yes.
They had an updated technology recently. Is that something that is going to be able to be used?
Yes, they have said that the security system will remain if we want to use it. If we don't want to use it, they will take it and put it in another facility. But this, in the other scheme, that security system should be able to be updated to control this facility, which does door controls and cameras, basically. This system would be a pretty, we would have to investigate how much could be retrofitted or if it's just worth getting a new system to operate this.
This one was priced as though it got a new control
This
room.
one has, I believe, a new control room.
A year or so ago.
This, so in this scheme, everything in this portion, almost everything is exactly the same, except we did not double bunk this area because it's better to leave this as just classification housing the way it is. So we left this, and then we modified this to the new housing plan. So this is the indirect housing unit, and we have it broken down to have some quad housing here and some double housing throughout. The way that we're getting to this currently is getting to 200 beds, and it does have an option that in the future, should it have to grow again, you could add another 52 beds to this facility, because this portion is going to have a mezzanine above it, so you'll see these stairs. There's another layer of cells directly above here that get you to 24, 40, 40, and 24. This side, we're going to kind of ghost those in, so there'll be a mezzanine that's built around here and then just walled off so that there's no access to it. And then in the future, should you need to add more beds, you can just take one pod at a time and say this pod is going to get some cells up here. It should be a fairly quick renovation. It does not shut down your facility in its entirety. It's a very simple way to get a larger bed increase.
So temporarily, say for 4 months, you close down 20 beds, but in the end, after 4 months, you have 40 beds because we can build above the other cells.
This scheme, one other difference is that we moved the laundry, instead of rebuilding the mechanical area, we moved laundry out as a separate space. Laundry, of course, has significant amount of plumbing and drainage and all of those things, exhaust, vibrations. It's way better to build as a new room rather than, and since we're already doing an addition with the corridor around here and the laundry, or adding the laundry there would be a much more cost-effective and efficient. It would have its own footprint there. This is brand new. So then it would allow just the construction to be done properly so that there are no issues in the future. This scheme, when we had a cost estimate done for this scheme, and so we have the same deferred maintenance cost as what was in the first one. We're taking that money because it's part of the issues of the facility. The new construction cost alone for just the hallways, the laundry room, and the housing unit in the middle is just under $9 million. The renovation cost is much less because we're not renovating the housing units, which are the most significant of the renovation portion. And so the other numbers are factored off of that. It's all kind of percentages, which get you to $20.6 million for the hard cost construction. And when you add the soft costs, which are also factors of the construction cost, you get to 28.5 approximately. The scheme, the difference that really drove the benefit is what the sheriff was talking about, and or we can add on to this together, but looking at where the officer stations, in this one being the direct supervision, you have one person at that control room, one person in booking, and then you have officers in each of the housing pods because somebody has to be inside that unit being able to observe. And then the screen one is a person as a rover. You'd have at least one rover station person. that would go around the facility. At different shifts, there's the potential for 2. In the new scheme with this renovation, there'd be a person in intake and booking, a person in this control station right here watching this area, and then this one station here has the ability through glazing to watch all of these pods at the same time, and then the one, maybe 2 rovers would be able to move around and make sure visually and physically are walking in amongst these people. This station, Lori and I have been talking more in depth, this station we believe, because this control room is actually going to be the most modern and efficient system, there is potential that the CRT staff position would not, potentially not be required.
CRT is a control room technician that isn't a deputy per se, a corrections deputy that's out on the floor working with the actual inmates. He's just monitoring the radios and the phones and the doors for the people to watch, or the deputies to watch.
So we go from 7 to 4, maybe, or 5.
Well, you got some.
Well,
We have some numbers in here. Let's go through these. So this is and I'll let the sheriff, these are your slides, so if you want to talk to them.
Nope, go ahead.
Okay,
Got it.
so this chart kind of gives the concept of how many would be required in each of the facilities. So currently there's 20 deputies. In the remodeled one, option 1 would be 34 deputies. In the new build, there'd be 24. So this is accounting for how many officers in all the shifts. So one position is 5 officers.
5, right?
Yep.
Just to be able to fill the time
One
slots.
24/7 position.
One
You gotta
24/7.
remember this is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 65 a year.
And the CRT would, in both schemes, would expand to be four positions, and the staff assistant would expand to be 2 positions. So when you look at the remodel versus the new build, the remodel is 46 staff, and the new build is 36 staff.
So you're 10 less, and that's year after year after year after year. So sometimes
Which is
you're,
$1 million.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's $1 million.
Yeah, so this is the actual cost to it. So the current billing, this is the current operational cost. When you add on the 14 deputies that have to be for the remodel, that's $1.2 million, and 4 deputies is only $340. So if you see how these kind of are aligning, and they're the same numbers except for that deputies line, the delta between the 2 options is significant.
Wait,
Yeah.
could you go back? Okay.
It's the little arrow button we learned. I just learned that.
So this chart is showing if we were to, doing the remodel option is $1.4 million more than the current staffing cost as it is right now.
Over how long?
A year,
Each year?
each year.
So almost 1.5.
Yeah.
Extra a year that the county would have to pay for to increase the cost of personnel costs.
So when you kind of break this down, you can start to think of it as what's the payback value. So if we're having to pay $12 million more dollars for the construction, this is going to be 10 years payback approximately. So within 10 years, that upfront construction cost would be mitigated.
And what do you do with the part of the building that will not be used? That's still going to be the building that will have to be maintained
Yep.
in an environment that's very water intensive.
Yeah. So we
Yeah,
did
I-
include,
Liability on that.
There's some big unanswered questions here, one of which is that if that option is selected, the other one which has come up, and the obvious question, what do we do with the old jail?
Right.
You know, we don't have answers to those.
Well, we've thought a lot about this for programming, for like mental health programming, drug court, and then also putting in some kind of judges' ability so they could come over there and have trials or whatever, you know, a place for arraignments, I should say, not trials. And there's all kinds of different options, maybe even.
But that adds to that 20.
Well, yeah, it does, but there's also little things that just where some of the rooms are fine, and we could be able to hopefully put in like, you know, things that would be more conducive for treatment and things like that, so.
So what I'm trying to calculate is the cost per prisoner, per inmate. And I'm also trying to think about the value for community members and how to calculate that. Because what it comes down
I
to.
think that's gonna be a whole nother work session, Commissioner. We just, because of
Probably
time.
do need to wrap up here pretty quick. And again, I see this as the beginning of a long discussion that we're gonna have over the next couple of months, I'm sure, maybe longer.
Is this gonna be online?
We can look at it online.
Don't know. So, go
I
ahead.
don't think in this study, the second option.
Yep,
you guys
the second
should
option is
consider.
not, the
This
second
study
shop,
was just
yeah.
on what can we do with the existing facility. So that's where you get that, you know, the $9 million remodel. The other one was kind of an add-on after talking about operating costs and well, we at least have to look at that.
Right, and what can we do to get to 200 beds?
I think that people may ask, I could be wrong, what if you remodeled at the lower cost and then later added the other? I know that would be a lot more cost overall, but people may ask this.
It's a great option too, a possible option, I should say, I don't know.
yeah, and with the facility having the center core, that, like, in this facility, the exterior perimeter of the building, every exterior wall is the secure perimeter as for the concrete enclosure is. The interior walls are not considered the secure perimeter walls. And so anything that you want to do inside here in the future, like if you build this out, this space is still available and can be renovated. And
Huge court, yeah.
the city of Warrenton has, when we've talked with them, they're open to the idea that if you build in there, that doesn't change zoning or conditional use permits or anything, because that's inside the perimeter, it's not changing anything.
Is there any opportunity for inmates with both of these to get outside into the air?
Yes, both
It's
of
all
them,
outside.
these green spaces in here are all about, and these are just, these are meant to just
That's a
show
huge
an
courtyard.
allotment of space that is a minimal amount, the minimum amount to kind of show the scale of this quadrangle here. Oregon Youth Authority has youth running and playing games through there all the time. And so it is a secure perimeter.
Okay,
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
thanks, Tom.
No, thank you.
That was really good.